Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code SLAMTHEGAVEL for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcisse Golden, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies. He receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will be then taken away from the only family he has ever known, and we have Judge Ann Donnelly to thank for that. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. Also, go to the site pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 3,000 more signatures. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. If you could sign the petition, that would be wonderful. I have a brand new guest on. I'm really happy to have on Kathy Watrel. And she came across an experience of, just wondering what her judge was writing about her during a court proceeding. Apparently the judge was, I don't know, doodling. Maybe she was drawing something, a landscape or whatever. But Kathy wanted to know, and she's going to explain to us how she found out. So I welcome you, Kathy.
Well, thank you, Marianne. Thanks for having me on today. I have been pretty stunned and shocked to find that after making a public records request to the court for all the judges' notes, handwritten notes, electronic notes, emails, phone calls, texts, that I came across one particular note that was distressful to me. And this is, cursive writing, and that's a little difficult to read when it's somebody else's. But at the bottom of this note from last April 6th, the judge wrote, "Former wife is represented by her lover, gave the name of my then attorney, and they are after money." And this is what she concluded from a hearing that was related to getting services for our oldest child, where child support wasn't being paid and my child struggling to get a job and needing other supported living services. And then also there was a very escalating crisis with our youngest daughter. And nowhere in that hearing were we talking about lovers, dating. I actually cried in this hearing because I intervened with the judge and asked her to please help. Our family was in crisis, and that there wasn't a day or a minute, an hour that went by that I wasn't fearful for both of my children and their well-being. And she told me that was very inappropriate, rude, not to talk to her, and didn't want to know anything about it. She said that I was very distracting. I guess my crying on mute on Zoom distracted her a lot. But given the context and the information from that transcript, nowhere in there was there anything close to me being lovers with my lawyer. In fact, we were in separate locations. This was a Zoom hearing. He was in his office and I was at my house. So you never know what you might find. I got 1,000 pages, and in there were these handwritten notes. So that was pretty shocking.
And how did you go about getting this? Did you call the courthouse to get this documentation? How do you go about doing this?
So in Florida, we have liberal discovery with the Sunshine Law, and I believe they just expanded it this past summer, where more information is available to the public under, in the name of transparency in government. And I initially messaged the public information officer of the whole city, who then referred me to the general counsel for the Duval County Courthouse.
Hmm.
And we went back and forth. It's definitely a process. I needed to clarify some emails and some different timeframes and things like that. The more specific a request can be, obviously, the less expensive it will be. It will be less time consuming to gather that information. But so anyway, through the course of all that and 5 trips to the courthouse to deliver certified checks, I came back with a box of paper that was about $1 per page, 1,000 pages, right? So I didn't know what I was going to find in there. And many of it was emails that I was copied on that I knew about. I was looking for ex parte communications of any kind, or other, unusual or inappropriate information, which bingo, I found that. So, yeah, I'm just really saddened by it, because we have so many, like other families as well, that end up in family court. We have so many egregious issues with our children, with both of our children. And that's what this judge determined about that is very sad to me.
And she had absolutely no respect for you or your ex or your family. She's just sitting there. Now, like, was she sitting directly across, like from a, desk, so you can see that she was drawing something, or was she sitting up high?
Well, she was on Zoom in her office, I believe.
Okay.
Everybody was Zooming, right? So that was back in 22 of April. And I believe they were starting to come back to court for shorter-ish, for longer issues. This was a quick hearing. And so of course, I feel that this judge cannot be fair. I feel that this judge is prejudicial to me and has made some false narrative of fabricating fantasies about me, and cannot rule fairly in this case, that I'm after money and that my lover is my lawyer. Well, both could not be further from the truth. And I filed a motion to disqualify her on July 21st, so 9 days ago, and haven't heard back. I also forwarded the motion to the chief judges. We have a chief judge over the whole courthouse and one just for family court, and I have not received any response from them either.
Other than a motion to disqualify, what about a motion to recuse? Because everyone else says recuse.
Yes, so one and the same, but to me,
Right.
it's a nuance. Recusal means like, oh, I go to church with that person, or when I was a lawyer, I was on the other side of this case, like that sort of conflict of interest. This is misconduct, in my opinion.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, so this isn't like, oh, I'm just going to step down because that's the right thing to do. This is someone wanted to write their bias in their notes, which were scanned, by the way. So the reason I came across just this one hearing of the handwritten notes is because she asked her judicial assistant to scan those to her, to email those to her, so she could remember what she wrote in order to write her ruling on that hearing. So, that was important enough. Out of everything that was said about child endangerment and needs and enforcing child support, that's what she found to be important to write down. And also concerning Marianne is that another judge could, this is part of my official record, so another judge could read her, her fantasy or fabrication and take on that perspective as well. So I just, the judicial canons just don't support this kind of behavior, and we can do better. we can do better as a community, and we can do better as a society. Then, I feel after all this, I feel that being a judge is not for everyone, and
Yeah.
everyone's not suited to be a judge. So
Right.
if this is what you're doing and these are some of the facts that you're finding, then maybe it's time to step down, at least from my case.
Yeah, and go work at McDonald's or something.
There you go.
So,
Yes.
so they can see how the other half lives.
Hmm.
It's such a shame that they are so arrogant and things have to be done their way, and they make up the rules as they go along, they make up the laws as they go along in family court, and people don't realize this upon entering a courtroom. They think it's going to be fair and just, and it's not.
Absolutely. We have a beautiful, newly built within like the last decade, courthouse, $350 million, marble, the columns, the whole 9 yards. And before this experience, I thought that's where justice happens. That's what
Mhm.
I learned in American government. This is democracy, and this is not. And this isn't the first issue this judge has had either. So in researching about previous cases, back in 2013, when she was newly elected as a judge, she was in criminal court. And there was a murder trial that was nationally televised that she was presiding over. It was called the Loud Music case. And she called the victim's father on her cell phone. This was discovered when the father was talking to opposing counsel and said, "Oh yeah, well, when we talked, this is," and he said, "What? Like, you talked to the judge?" And he acted like, "Well, of course I did." And then also in that same trial, these are based on information that I got from the news. So local newspaper covered this, but there was a witness for the defense that was going to testify. The judge called, apparently, again, this is supposed according to the article, called that potential witness, found out what that witness was going to say, presumably didn't like what he was going to say, and prevented him from testifying.
Hmm.
So there's something wrong about that. What I've read about a judge does is gather information, follow procedure. In a criminal case, they provide that information for the jury to decide. In this case, she is my jury, and her bias is shining through very loudly in this note.
That's a disgusting note.
Mm-hmm. It's really disgusting given all the background as well, that what was going on. In less than 24 hours after this hearing, my 14-year-old ran away and was missing for 3 days. So as I'm pleading to the
Mm.
court, I know I'm not supposed to speak directly. And then we're also in an emergency situation, and I was told to just sit there. None of that is in the note, I notice as well. Nothing about emergent issues with children or welfare of children. It's just that was her main conclusion, that was my lover. And I'd never known my divorce lawyer until I had a need for a divorce lawyer.
Right.
So, couldn't be further from the truth.
But she has this false narrative that now when you're hopefully given another judge, hopefully they won't take it don't take it seriously.
Well, I know it's either rumors, or you wonder what's going on under the robe, or there's maybe some other type of cognitive issue going on here. It's
Mhm.
just it's very, very troubling in many ways. And of course, this isn't we aren't the only case that this judge presides over. But also of note is that the father is an attorney within this very same courthouse. I think he calls himself a trial lawyer who sues, nursing homes, and he does personal injury litigation. So he has the ability to write all of his own motions. He has connections with other attorneys. He now works for a bigger firm that has a positive reputation, so that's helping him. And really, do I belong in this courthouse? How am I going to have fairness? That's all I'm asking for, is someone to listen to these facts. And I think if a reasonable minded person listened to the facts that are being presented, I mean, we're talking about my child's finger was, the tendon was detached and dangling from being pushed. I mean, if that's not abuse. My child was left overnight while the father went to a legal conference in Orlando while she's in crisis, going down the drain, a 14-year-old. There's just so many things. And I filed an emergency motion to have those contempt issues heard back in November. Emergency. She didn't schedule it. Judge Suzanne Bass didn't schedule it until December the following year. So 13 months later for an emergency.
Oh, no, no.
And in our last hearing, I asked directly if she was able to enforce a parenting plan that's ordered by the court. And she said, well, that she could. I'm paraphrasing, of course, she could, but that she didn't want to get pulled into our issues, our personal issues. So she was really avoiding ruling on that. So this is who we have. I'm asking, I think it's a bigger issue for our community and for the court and, the judicial committee. But I'm asking for my case, may I please have someone that is impartial, that can listen to facts, that doesn't have some prejudicial view of what is happening here.
Exactly.
I just don't think that's too much to ask. So I'm really hopeful that maybe with some encouragement from the chief judges that a right decision will be entered this week.
Right, because these chief judges are supposed to be controlling these other judges.
Yep. Well, they got their hands full here because there's several different issues going on in different cases. But again, if the time has come when you no longer can be objective, you no longer can listen to this information, I get it. I am a mental health therapist. I listen to a lot of difficult things each day. I also don't try to judge people, and I try to really hear what their needs are. And in this case, I'm asking that she follows the statutes and the laws and the current court orders. So I am, of course, after receiving that and looking through the box of documents, I'm requesting all the other handwritten notes from other hearings, which I'm estimating are about 8 or 9 other court proceedings that we had with her. Well, now the general counsel informs me that those are confidential. That's not part of the official court record, and I wasn't supposed to get those either. So I thought, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure you weren't supposed to give me that, because look how damaging that is to justice, right? So now I'm going to be pursuing that. In addition, there were also some emails to her judicial assistant. Her judicial assistant, I think I read, had been with her for about 12 years or so. And our judge used her iPhone for official business, which now I'm going to request all text messages and calls from that cell phone related to official business. And then now, of course, they said they asked Judge Bass to check her phone for these phone numbers that I listed, but she didn't have any communication at all, Marianne. She looked and I said, well, that just seems a little cumbersome for a judge with all the cases that she has. Can we go ahead and get the official transcript from the cell phone company? So that's what we're working on. But it is a process. I want people to know if they are thinking about doing that. In addition, I thought very carefully about doing this, but I am at 0 with this judge. This judge has already made up her mind, in my opinion, before I walk into that courtroom. There's no information that's considered. So I'm at a 0, and I'm probably now at a -7. But if you're just kind of neutral with your judge, or you're wondering, that's something to consider, because I don't think even though it is public information, that they probably enjoy, revealing that.
Yeah, this Judge Bias, I mean Judge Bass has got to get her act together. You go through all this education to become an attorney, and then you're nominated or elected or appointed to be a judge. If they don't act honorable. Where is the honor anymore?
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. And if it's too much to assimilate and all the things that come across her way, then that's okay. You can, there's other choices, but don't, my point is, if you're not able to uphold the oath that you took, then let's be real about that, and let's confront that.
Well, I've seen, and heard even like newspaper articles on one judge where she got reprimanded for canceling hearings to get her hair and nails done. And
Wow.
then she got, and this made the paper too, that she was screaming at all litigants and attorneys just at random. So they assigned her I don't know if it was, I think the administrative judge assigned her a babysitter for 8 months.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're not even,
Wow.
I mean, okay, so you have a babysitter. Why are we paying taxpayer dollars on a judge that cannot behave? So you have to
Exactly.
assign and pay someone else to
Exactly.
babysit.
100%. That's absurd. And one thing that I have started to do is to ask court watchers to join our hearings in a way that's a neutral observer. So that's interesting what's being observed. I would recommend that for anybody. Again, that's one of our constitutional rights, as well as these records requests.
Mhm.
So yeah, but it's you're kind of, it takes a little while to be, it's very, I'm just stunned every time I walk out of there that that's how it goes. But this is really intolerable right now. Like, I am not going to tolerate that. And that's why I'm happy that you invited me to speak about this today, because it's probably happening in other cases that she's presiding over, and across the country, maybe with some other judges. So if it's time where we don't enjoy our work, where we can't put aside these other thoughts and prejudicial feelings, then that's why judges are encouraged to recuse or disqualify themselves if there's that situation. So,
Well, I
and
think
the other thing is, other judges, are they going to stand by quietly? Because you know, I just feel like this is known that some of this behavior is happening, but we're not doing anything. And again, I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I have never had a need to do that with a colleague, but if someone is not following the ethics and the law according to your license, I don't get how we're just standing by and, oh, well, that's just how she is. No,
no.
she's making decisions about the most vulnerable people in our community. And in this case, my 2 children, which I love and care about very deeply. And it's just, I'm just really disgusted.
Oh, I am too. To hear all this and to know that I'm sure other judges are doing the same thing.
Mm.
And that's why I'm glad you spoke out about this, because I would wonder, I mean, this is like we're going back to 2015, 2017, whatever, but the judge would sit desk level and we'd be standing at a rail, and she would never look you in the eye, and she's writing stuff down. I'm going, what is she writing down?
I
And
know.
maybe it's time to find out.
Exactly. I was looking for little stick figures with, like,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
doodle on a cocktail napkin, and that's just not appropriate in my official court record.
Right. How far back do you think, you may not know, but how far back can someone look if their case is 10 years old, for instance? Would they even have those records?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, thankfully, I've only been doing this 6 years. I don't know, maybe we could circle back if it goes on for 10, let's hope not,
I
but
hope not.
right, it's just, and the whole reason this has happened for 6 years is because the other party cannot be fair, cannot look at a big picture about what the well-being of our children is. So it's kind of an area where he feels he excels, but let's be fair, let's get someone to take an honest look at it and to enforce the law and the statutes and the standing orders.
Mhm. That has to be done, especially when a young teen or any child of any age, uh, this is her dragging this out for 6 years because you've been with Judge Bias Bass, whatever, for 6 years, right?
No, only for 4. We
That's
had
long
another
enough.
judge. We had I was forced to go to a trial again because the other party, in my opinion, couldn't be fair. And then these are all parenting issues with Judge Bass. Mhm.
And you wondered, does she have kids of her own or not?
I don't believe so. I've never really found that out for sure, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's a good question, right?
Yeah.
Are you a parent? Do you know how that is? But regardless, is she an ethical, honest person that can follow the professional conduct of her position? The community elects these judges thinking, that they're going to have fairness.
Mhm.
I don't believe she's ever been back in criminal court since that loud music murder trial.
Mhm.
And so are we going to put people that don't follow judges that aren't following the law, essentially, are we going to put them in family court where the doors are closed, there's no cameras, and there's no juries? That's my question.
Mhm. That's why I harp on it all the time. I'm sure people are sick of me, but we've got to abolish family court. I mean, people say, well, it's a broken system, but no, it's functioning beautifully the way they want it to. So they
Mhm,
can churn out more personality disorders via our children who will come back to family court and just keep recycling humans.
mhm,
So I
mhm,
think it should just be taken down to civil court where you have a jury and things will be shortened. You shouldn't be in court for 4 to 6 years or 8 years. What
mhm,
people are going through, they should have their act together by now.
mhm.
Y
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very abusive. I mean, financially, emotionally. We've had so many parenting issues. For a while, I didn't see my youngest for over a year because she was allowed to stay with her dad, where there were very few rules and there was a lack of supervision, and she just was had a very difficult time. Failed ninth grade, lost 35 pounds. I tried constantly to get to see her, and he just said, well, if you have her number, and if she wants to get together with you, she'll let you know. Hmm. And this is a man that sues companies,
Mhm.
sues nursing homes and other insurance companies for abuse and neglect. And it seems like that's a complete contrast in his own life. So those are some of the things that we have scheduled for December.
Mhm.
Again, I had to wait 13 months, and
Unbelievable.
yeah, so that's what an emergency was considered.
So, okay, so you've got to wait till this December. Do you have a date for this December, I hope?
Well, it's like around the 15th. So, you know how you go that week and then they see what dates are available. We have 3 consecutive dates. So we also have a hearing coming up in August for the father to prevent caretakers from testifying and our daughter's therapist from information that we subpoenaed. So it's just lots of roadblocks, lots of, really legal games. Let's just get to the bottom of it.
Mhm.
But now that is almost all about contempt motions. And Judge Bass isn't fair and she can't hear these issues without bias. And this was evident on this April 6th hearing in 22. So I'm not sure who's going to hear that hearing in, August 15th, I believe it is, middle of August.
And that's a contempt one.
No, that's the one in December. This one is just to prevent, well, really what it is discovering information about what happened on his parenting time. And so instead of sharing information about the caretakers and what days they were there and what days they weren't, that's threatening, I believe, in some way. So apparently that's cumbersome, some of the information that I'm asking them for. So there's a roadblock there. And that's what's happened this whole time, is just a bunch of legal games. And, he knows it well. He's been a lawyer for over 30 years, and he has friends that he can consult with. And I think he only, on his financial affidavit, he said he only pays for 2 hours of legal services a month. So that would be nice, right? But I don't write my own briefs.
Oh,
Yeah, so there's just a lot of fraud. There's a lot, but really the bare minimum that I'm asking for is for a judge that can be open-minded, listen to what's being presented, and rule according to the law. I don't think there's too much to ask.
no.
That's too much. So,
Wow. Yeah. I have yet to meet one that did. I hate to say that in my cases. Even going into federal court in my cases.
Wow.
Very, yeah. It goes that deep. I think it goes even deeper than we all think.
Yeah. So I think that this is a whole courthouse situation at this point, because now these records are confidential all of a sudden. Interestingly, I believe that the general counsel, I think she has a relative that works for the First Amendment Foundation. So I think there's a chance that he's on the board, I believe, the relative. And so there may be some information there, but I'm asking some really basic questions like who's Judge Bass's supervisor, who's the general counsel supervisor, do you represent Judge Bass in this? Why would we have all these roadblocks? And really, if someone's seeing this that's written about me, is there a concern that that might need to be reported, that we have a judge that feels so comfortable with the fabrications to write that down? We just don't know the source of it, if that was something just completely made up in her mind just while she's sitting there, or there was another source for that.
Or maybe she wishes she was having the affair with your attorney.
It could be. I mean, yeah.
Is he hot?
He is. He's cute. He is cute. But better yet, Marianne, he was my attorney for 4.5 years, who helped me relentlessly. And, I think that probably they're jealous of him. Probably the father's jealous.
Still.
It's just, I guess if it gets boring, they have to, create like a little soap opera in their mind. But sorry, that was not the case. And really, I guess the money that I was asking for would never be money that would come to me. This was my oldest child's, who's a disabled dependent. This was her child support. So she's had 3 eviction notices. Her electricity was threatened to be cut off. She gets $20 Venmo'd. Could you and I go to the grocery store for $20? It wouldn't even be worth the time. I mean, what would you buy 2 things? So she ends up getting junk at a gas station. It's like, this food insecurity, and it's just really unconscionable. It makes me sad, and it also makes me mad. And in the anger is where I'm going to take action. So we don't know where this is going. I would encourage other people, though, to also get public records with law enforcement, with child protective services, schools. we've had all these different services involved. And so I'm getting public records through all that, even to an address. You could get all the police calls for the last 4 years for that address. And, we had law enforcement involved with our youngest child. I was never called. I was never consulted. There was an adult person who endangered her. The father allowed her to be endangered during this whole year, but there was an adult person arrested. I was never contacted about anything. Yet I was the one that went and looked for her for 3 days in parks, in dumpsters. I called the dad. Someone said, "Oh, I think we saw them, here or there." I called the dad at 9 o'clock to ask, and he was asleep. And the person who was next to him rolled over and said, "Hang up the phone, hang up the phone." And he did. He hung up the phone at 9 o'clock, sound asleep. It wasn't just, it was like, hello. And I am out there. And I think that's such an analogy for how things have been. That's outside of what a judge can do, but a judge needs to hear these issues about the abuse, about the neglect, and to enforce orders in this court. She rolls in there with her talking points, I believe, and already has her mind made up, and then adds a little extra. So I don't know. Maybe she did like the lawyer. I don't know. Certainly we were in separate locations at that time on Zoom. So a fly on the wall wouldn't have figured anything out or determined that. It's really shocking and disgusting to me. So.
Yeah, it sounds like she needs a psychological evaluation. And it seems like, she really should be removed off the bench.
I believe so. But instead, what's happening is 9 days go by and there's nothing. So it's just collusion. It's just protecting. No, let's face it. And again, everybody's time has come. It seemed like she started out with some difficulty with that criminal case. Then I believe she was removed from criminal court. But if we have someone that's elected and this isn't really what they thought it would be, or they're not capable of doing the job, then have the decency to the rest of us to just face that. And I think as we can do better.
Right. I mean, like, even we'll say, for example, like nurses, it's a very physically demanding job. And if you hurt your back, if you have another physical issue, sometimes you have to face the facts and find something, maybe work at a doctor's office where you're not lifting or things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And so things happen, or maybe, I don't know if another court would be less demanding. Family court is not fun. I'm sure if I were a judge, that'd be hard all day, right? You're making really important decisions, but we should have people that want to be there, not that this is a burden for them, that this is a burden to ask to enforce court orders. I mean, if that standard were set, I don't think I'd be here for 6 years. Let's just follow the court order. But I was told that she didn't want to get pulled into that and any personal problems. In other hearings, I was told that to say that the father hasn't paid child support for 3 years was financially embarrassing to this lawyer at a well-respected law firm. It was scandalous, and that I needed to remove it out of my motion.
Give me a break.
No, exactly. So, I mean, it's profound. And this was, the beginning of documenting that for me. So I mean, I'm not going to let that go. And that's why I'm today talking about it. So,
well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's everything's public in a docket. It's so unfortunate that our family can't handle parenting our two beautiful kids in a way, a lawyer and a therapist, but it has to be played out in a court. And, it's just the coercive cycle of abuse happening there. So wrong.
issues that are very important. It's why it's do you have custody or
Well, that's interesting. So I have 100% overnights with our youngest, yet I have 0 days of visitation. Nowhere have they said I'm an unfit mother, that there's abuse. I mean, there certainly is that I'm claiming in the other household, but it's very, very painful. So I had a very connected and loving relationship with our youngest, and we were constantly together. And then she was allowed to choose to go over there and never came back. And very, very destructive, horrible things happened for that whole 18 months. And I had to stand back, and the only thing I could do is either wait for a call from the police, the hospital, or try to go through family court and try to do what it is set up to do. Nobody wants to be there. That's the last place I want to be. I get physically queasy when I walk into that
oh
courthouse.
yes, yes.
And so it's just, it just shows a lot about this system. And I that was the first time I ever heard that, Marianne, that you said we need to get rid of family court. We don't need to fix it. We need to eliminate it. And so are you thinking that it would just get mixed in with like a personal injury case? Meaning like, okay, that same judge hears these civil cases and then here comes a family case?
Well, put it before a civil court judge, and if there's any false allegations, you'd have a jury,
Okay.
and it would just go before that judge, and it should just be ruled on just matter of factly. So the facts were being heard, and not caring if your emotion is disturbing to the opposing side, because uh, whatever I just would think and hope that a civil court judge would just be more fair and cut and dry.
Yeah, and how about perjury? How
Yeah,
about procedure, right? If
right.
those two things could be followed, yeah.
I mean,
But
I would think so. I
Mhm.
would hope so and think so.
Right. Those are two things that seem to be optional. I mean, there's so many egregious things presented to the court that, well, you know, um, for instance, even that he is not only paying the child support for the oldest child, but he added another 600 on to what he's paying for her. I mean, there's no way that's happening. About half of that money is kept for himself, or he got a refund in child support for the youngest from school tuition. Nobody knows where that is. So that's our kids' money. That's not something that I benefit from. Our children need that for living and for their services that they need, which both have a need for that. So
Right. When did they let this 14-year-old make the decision to live there? I mean, that just,
yeah, well, so this is interesting. So Judge Bass said she can't, so she's determined, I don't know if this might be in another note from another hearing, we'll find out, but she determined that Cece's strong-willed and strong-headed. Almost as if she implies that she knows her personally somehow. I
hmm,
think the only way that she would have had extra information outside of court that I'm aware of is when I posted this, that she was missing. So the judge lives a couple of streets down from me, and there's an app, this community app next door, and I posted it on there because it reaches a lot of people.
hmm,
Maybe she saw it on that. I've seen her post about her roof repairs, and she said trying to find people for an electrical panel and things like that. So I know she uses it, but how she would know that my child's strong-willed and strong-headed, that was never presented in any hearings. And so there's this
ugh,
familiarity that she sometimes is like, knows her almost like a grandmother or something. And
ugh.
no, that's not what we're there for. We have family members, but we just need a judge that will listen and enforce.
Oh,
Yep. So I don't know where that came from. In another case, at the same time, the same week, the same time frame with the same age child, Judge Bass found that there was alienation and prevented that child from having any contact with the protective parent for 8 months. And then that child was given to the father, who had a history of domestic violence, and then physically abused that child and is now, and got arrested. So I've, connected with other people who are experiencing this of the same judge. So
Mhm.
how could both be true? One's a strong-willed kid and you can't make her do anything. And then this other child who, she determined there was alienation, didn't allow the therapist to testify, and didn't allow, a karate instructor, and didn't allow the child to testify. But she knew that was alienation. But in my case, yeah, she's strong-willed. And so that was something that was brought up. This isn't my first motion to recuse her. And that was brought up in that, just the complete opposing rulings and beliefs. So it seems that she believes what she's ruling. Again, there were no facts presented in that case, but she was sure.
Mhm.
And so I don't disagree with you about the psych eval. I don't know who orders that, but
Yeah, it should be ordered. Yeah. I also, these courts are perpetuating the parental alienation.
mhm.
Look how she did that.
Yeah.
And other parents' cases, including my own, I was blocked, no contact via iPhone, landline, iPod. He named off everything, including Mother's Day. Who does that?
Right. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
Marianne. I mean,
yeah.
it's just so egregious. And I think some pathology, psychological pathology is being played out. There's unchecked power.
Mhm.
There's, immunity, there's ability to use your discretion. These are all words, these are all code for corruption and wrongdoing, protecting
Mhm.
wrongdoing. So I'm very dismayed. I'm very sad. I think probably the only thing that could be worse is if you had a criminal case and she was presiding over it and that was your life right there. But this is also my life with my kids,
Right,
right?
right.
They were endangered very, very much. And, we have a parenting coordinator on the case, never called to see when our child was in a national missing person search. But they're there for the check.
Mhm, mhm.
So, if I want to make an appointment for $400 and go talk about it and they won't do anything or protect, then I'm free to do that. Yeah.
What a shame.
Hmm. Yeah, it really, really is. So I'm gonna keep looking. I'm really motivated to get those other handwritten notes, which now all of a sudden are confidential. That's part of the work product. You can't get notes that go into the the ruling. Well, of course, yeah, if that's part of what it is. You
Ugh,
know, it's just, you never know what somebody's writing about you. So I guess that circles back to that, right? But if people are really feeling like their issues aren't being heard, you could ask for that. In Florida, again, we're pretty liberal, so I'm just learning about our state. I can't speak on others. But then of course there's the Freedom of Information Act, which is federal. So
mhm.
for federal agencies, yeah, that would all be the same. But in Florida, we have very liberal laws. And so it might take a while to get them to do what the law says, or they might try to narrow it in, and all of a sudden now some things are excluded. One record request, because I have a couple little things pending. The general counsel was charging me her $80 an hour fee to actually write me an email back. So she was
Oh my God.
charging me to charge me. And I said, well, no, you're already paid by the taxpayers to
Right.
serve the taxpayers. So we'll just go ahead and include that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See,
So I don't see how I can be in this courthouse, Marianne, the moment I'm talking to you about
yeah,
this. It's really like,
it just the venue needs to be moved.
I agree.
And
What's
that's
your
so hard.
experience with that?
Well, I was told because I wanted to move venue because it's like I actually wrote a motion and I was going to tell the child support judge that I wanted the venue moved to get away from her. And
Mhm.
then I backed down because it's like, now she's going to make my life worse.
Mhm.
She's not going to do this. And she was ramping up the torture, you know. So I also heard it's very expensive to move venue.
Okay, that's
But
interesting. Why is that expensive?
well, at least, you know, up here in Pennsylvania, I heard of a case where they had to get their family court case out of the courthouse and take it down to another county. And when
Mhm.
they did that, they did win, but it cost them $15,000 to move all this down there. And I don't know why, what incurred the cost, to be honest with you. I was told this many years ago, probably in 2014,
Okay.
but you know, it's worth a shot. It may not cost anything. I'm depending on your state.
Right. Well, I'm fine if they can get a judge for me that can actually listen to the facts and keep their own personal biases out. That's the number one job of a judge, in my opinion.
Right. Well, you think they would have the maturity level for that, but I'm finding that they don't.
Hmm. Yeah, just that that was so just easy to put in writing about this this fabrication just leads me to think that it's gossipy or vindictive, retaliatory, some of those things. So those aren't things that I feel like I can be fairly heard and that my kids won't be harmed by. So there's in this and all this time, this is let's just say about $100,000 of attorney's fees from the time she wrote this note. I mean, so anything she's ruled on, in my opinion, is just completely biased and needs to, be revisited. But again, it's more cost and cost and cost.
Right, because when you change venue, then you're redoing the whole case all over again.
Yeah,
And
that's
maybe yeah, maybe that's why it was 15,000 for that case, but it went quick. It was
mhm.
quick and over with, and that's how these cases should be, quick and over with.
Oh, exactly. I think, that the judge mentioned, Cece will be 18 soon, and I think that's what she's hoping. So I don't know if it's just so hard for her to rule against her colleague and the esteemed local lawyer at the well-respected law firm. But if it is, but the fact is that the child support hasn't been paid for 3 years, I should be able to put that in a motion and not. And we had a separate hearing just for that to strike, I think it is, or well, I don't know if you call it a motion to eliminate or strike or
Yeah,
what, but to remove it out of this motion, and everything gets delayed, everything's expensive.
yeah,
I don't know, I guess his own lawyer, or the lawyer that I call him the co-counsel, because
yeah.
I think that he's told what to do and directed. He's just like the front man.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess as long as he gets paid his 2 hours of legal fees each month, he's good.
Well, I guess we all know who's driving the crazy bus, you know? So sad, but I mean, I'd like to have you back on to
Well,
see,
thank
you know, for
yeah.
updates and to see how you go about getting and obtaining more information.
Mhm.
I think parents need to know this.
Yeah, I absolutely will. The best place again, I after sitting in American government, and I should have been paying much, much more attention than I was, Marianne, but
Well,
now I'm learning this whole new area. But the best place I think to look is online. The Attorney General has really good information in Florida about public records request. The governor's office had information about that as well. So in our state, it's public information request, and it's code 119. But then the other layer that gets added onto that is the judicial administration code. So it will dictate what can be redacted, what can be included. And there were 4 emails that were completely redacted. Like there was no the, to, there wasn't a single word. And these were related to the judge. The judicial assistant asked Judge Bass if she received the emergency pickup order. So my child was left alone. It's debatable. It was a good 8 hours while the father went to a mediation in Tampa. This is immediately after the adult who's been released from jail now that endangered her is in the area, right? So this isn't anything that I make up a crisis. I am just responding constantly to this really, really negligent behavior. So anyway, the judicial assistant emails Judge Bass and she responds on her iPhone. And whatever her response was, Marianne, it was completely redacted. So
Mm.
what could the answer be? Did you receive it? It would be either yes, no, maybe. But what are the 4 lines that you can't tell me what that said? So I doubt it was her social security number. I doubt it was a criminal confession. I doubt it was identifying financial information. So I plan on getting that as well and
Yeah,
finding out what was in there.
definitely. You have to investigate, and you have to be proactive, and parents have to be able to do this. And I'm glad you came on to explain all this.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll definitely keep you posted
Yeah.
if there's a recusal, and then what other little gems I might find along the way. I'm sure that is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure, Kathy. How can people reach you if they have any questions?
Well, I'm part of a group called POW Moms, POW Moms, and we try to share information like this. The other group that is in Florida is One Mom's Battle, the Florida chapter. So we try to share information related to our discoveries or updates on hearings. We try to be court watchers for each other and give support and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's probably the best way. But again, it's going to be state specific.
Right, right. And the POW moms, that's on Facebook, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay,
It's
because
a
I thought I
post.
saw it there.
Yeah, I think I saw your comment. Yeah, that we posted. There was a TikTok video that I did with Tracy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I was so mad that day. That was like right after I found this out. And I'm still really mad and I'm still saddened. I am. I just this is not okay.
No.
These are the most vulnerable people in our community. And this is, you think back in history of courthouses and public community buildings and what they symbolize. And in the course of walking my 5 certified checks, certified, mind you, I couldn't just go to the Publix grocery store and get a cashier's check. I had to go to the bank. But I noticed there was a time capsule in the lobby, and I would pass by that because, of course, if I'm going to a hearing or a trial, I'm not looking at what the displays are. But on there, I stopped one day to see what that was about. And in the time capsule, they have pieces from old courthouses, but it also has the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. That says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I thought, oh, yeah. And her name was engraved in the bottom of that in granite. And that was just a very impactful moment for me. It's sad. We can do
Yes.
better and we will do better. It just might take them a little while to do the right thing.
Well, hopefully not too much longer, because justice has got to be brought forth in the appropriate manner.
Mhm. Correct. Yep. And so maybe we'll see if the local news might be interested in picking it up. I know they are very that's touchy with family court, but this kind of is pervasive just beyond this. So
Definitely.
anyway, I thank you for
Well,
listening to me and letting me share about this.
oh, you'll be back, and don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Kathy Watrel and other exciting guests. And you can find me on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, Spotify. I'm everywhere. And thank you again, Kathy.
Thanks, Marianne. Appreciate it.